So, welcome to Small Things Brought Together. This is episode 5, season 2, episode 5. And I am delighted to be here with Larry Weyand, who is an artist who lives very nearby. So, this will be a first for me. Larry lives in Corner Brook, Newfoundland. But as I discovered, also like me, you're from New England. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am from Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so excited when I saw that because I grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, very close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
So,
about 2 hours near Portland, so about 2 hours away from Boston.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I grew up also on Route 95.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so, very New England way of describing where you live.
Picking up what you're putting down. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So I was excited to get that little piece of your bio.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I would love to hear more. So I wonder if you would just share a little bit about your background, any part of your background, your
Yeah.
art, life, any part of that would be great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess, yeah, New England is only half of who I am. The other half, so that's from my dad. My dad is from New England. He was originally born in Beaver, Pennsylvania, but his mother's side of the family is from Maine, and he moved to Maine, and so did his brothers and sisters and all my cousins. So we're from Maine, more or less, south of Maine, and my mom is from a little town called Chateauguay, which is near Montreal in Quebec, and she is French. And she just went down there to Maine for a quick summer vacation and met my dad, and they fell in love. And then that is the story of me. And I got to pretty much grow up in both places. My mom was a teacher, so she had summers off, and my dad's a boat builder, so I would go to Maine for the summers with my dad and build boats and all that fun stuff, and then go to school in Quebec in the winter. And eventually my parents got divorced, and I still kept that up. So school in Montreal and Quebec, and then and summer in Maine. And so I kind of got a taste of both worlds. And yeah, that was really fantastic. It definitely has influenced my work a lot in the way that I practice. So just shifting back and forth from those two places for sure. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Well, I always had grown up hearing about like Quebecers coming down to go to Double O, Old Orchard.
Yeah. Oob,
So,
we like to call it.
what?
Oob. Old
Oob.
Orchard.
Yeah. Yeah, you could always tell the people who were from, well, we would say from Montreal, because they were the people wearing like fashionable bathing suits.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's great. And I mean, the town where we live, it's a very small town. It's called Biddeford in Maine, and it's historically a textile mill town. So it has this beautiful mill, all brick laid, just really, really, really beautiful. And it was one of the biggest textile producers back in the day before everything kind of got it, exported to Asian countries and so on. But there is a huge history around in the 1800s, late 1800s, where a lot of Quebec workers just were out of work in Quebec and just immigrated to Biddeford in those
Mm.
towns, and started working in the mills. So there's a lot of French names around and a lot of almost French culture, but it's been very Americanized and distilled. But there's still that really strange history that's there that's always kind of got me thinking. Like there's probably a reason why I was so serendipitous that, my parents met there in that circumstance. Anyways, yeah, it's a lot. But yeah, I love those mills. They're really beautiful.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they're not working as mills anymore, but they're fantastic. There a lot of art spaces now are opening up in there, and
Cool.
yeah, but yeah,
Hmm. I think there's also a town in Rhode Island called Woonsocket.
yeah, I know Woonsocket.
Yeah, we used to
Yeah.
joke and call it Woonsocket because there were so many French people who moved down to work in the mills.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny. So that's been a really big influence in my art practice. And the first big art project that I ever made was about the textile mills in Biddeford. And I went around because a lot of the workers who had worked at those mills, a few of them are still alive and love talking about it. I mean, if you give anyone a microphone and a space to talk about their experience doing something, and when they are often overlooked and not heard, that's when the magic comes out. So I just went there and sat down and pressed record on the microphone and just let them talk about what it was like to work in the textile mills and their experiences and all that. So that was one of my first big projects when I was doing my MFA. And yeah, it was really, really magical. It was just this audio documentary that I had prepared, and I had made these little listening stations with props and things that you can interact with. Yeah, it was great. So yeah, that history, I really hold it dear to my heart. And anything that has to do with industrialism, production, like manufacturing, production of textiles, like the greater implication of what that means is very, you know, integral as like my art practice, I guess. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have some images of that project and I really was excited to talk to you about it
Yeah.
because that little piece of it also, now I understand better how the Quebec piece came in, because when I just read on your website, I was like, that's sort of an odd pairing. I'm not sure I'm getting why that's happening, but yeah, no, it makes way more sense.
Yeah.
So where did you do your MFA? Was that in Montreal?
Yeah, at Concordia University.
Oh, at Concordia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want us to know? You live in Newfoundland now.
I do live in Newfoundland now. Yeah.
What happened?
That was a series of events. So I met my partner, and his parents they're not from here, but they've been here for a better part of the past decade or so in St. John's. So when I was finishing up my degree, we didn't really know. We were kind of both up in the air. We didn't really know what was going on. So we said, well, we're ready for an adventure. Let's go to Newfoundland. We had both already been there before in St. John's and loved it, and thought that it might be a great place to relocate and just get a little bit closer to his folks. And yeah, when we first got here, I spent a summer working on Fogo Island.
Oh.
And then in a museum and for Kay Burns. I don't know if you know Kay Burns.
Not personally, but
Yeah.
I know of her. I know in
Yeah.
a museum.
Yeah, yeah. And then I moved to St. John's, started working for the Craft Council, and then applied to be for an 8-month term contract, teaching contract at Grenfell in fine arts, material practices, and fiber arts, and interviewed and got it. And now we're in Cornerbrook.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, you missed Stormageddon in St. John, so that probably was nice.
Yeah, that's great. We got about 2 little snowflakes.
Yeah, I know, that was amazing. Although, you know, I couldn't help but think it's sort of all like every winter is Stormageddon on the West Coast, so I don't know.
Yeah. I was gearing up for it. You know, it's like, oh, the West Coast definitely gets it worse than St. John's.
I know, when we had it easier, right? All right, well, we can talk about the weather some other time. So I'm gonna pull up your your images, and so for me, this whole video series is really about hearing from you, from artists, about your process. I'm really interested in creative process, and for me, it's really that I truly believe that every single person is like our birthright to be creative. I think that's like why we're here on earth, is for you know, we have this consciousness.
Yep.
And it allows us to be creative. And so I'm just always really curious how artists think about and and create their work. So the process of the work. And
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So like I said, I put these together and I was a little bit I don't know if I take liberties or whatever, but I kind of put them together in a way that makes sense to me. And
Yeah, absolutely.
what I've discovered is doesn't always make sense to the artist. But anyway, so I chose this one. I just really this project really resonates for me, I have to say. I really love it.
Oh,
And so just will you just tell us what we're looking at here?
yeah, absolutely. So you're looking at a recreation of a page out of an IKEA catalog. And what I've done is I was a little bit about the process. I was looking through this IKEA catalog and I fell onto this limited edition, special edition, like spring collection of items, household items. And I was just like, I've never heard, I mean, I've heard of limited editions if, certain artists or designers are creating a limited edition furniture, but it just seemed so excessive to me for some reason. And I don't know, there's something about it. I was just like struck by it, like, oh, it just feels like we talk a lot about fast fashion, but it just felt like fast furniture.
Yeah, I mean,
Because IKEA is kind of like that sometimes. I don't know if you've ever owned IKEA furniture. Some of it is really great, but a lot of it, it's like, it just feels like it's made of cardboard and it just kind of falls apart after you sit on it a couple times. And it felt like that, like this particular image felt like that to me in the IKEA catalog. So I was really curious about manufacturing processes and industrial processes and how those are contrasted with the works of really, really highly skilled artisans who have poured their life into, honing their skill and being able to produce really lovely works of art and functional art that will last for centuries, right? Or I mean, in fact, for years. So I decided, well, I gave myself a limited amount of time. I gave myself 4 months. And I said, I'm going to recreate as much as I can out of this IKEA catalog by hand using the techniques of the great craftspeople that I know. So I went around and I worked with some of the craftspeople that I know. Some of the stuff I learned by looking at, YouTube instructional videos. Some of it I had knowledge and skill on how to do it. And I did, to the best of my ability, recreate this. And I mean, as you can see, some of the objects are not as they
yeah.
look like on the catalog, right? So yeah, that's the catalog on the table there. Yeah. And then some of the stuff I was like, how am I going to do this? Because I don't own a forge, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I use for the little pot that's there in the middle. I bent the metal, I welded it together. It holds water. It boiled it a little bit, and then kind of, I just try to do it as best as I possibly could. I hand poured the candles. I made the candle holders out of wood that I turned. I made all the ceramic bowls myself. The pillows you see there, I actually wove the fabric for it and printed it. But it was so eye-opening. So have you heard of Thomas Thwaites, I think is his name? He's the one who recreated the toaster. He basically he went and mined all of the materials necessary to make this toaster and just tried to source as many materials as he could to make this functioning toaster. And it's this ugly thing, but it works. But that's kind of my reasoning behind this. I was like, even if I'm making everything by hand, I'm still sourcing something that has been previously manufactured. Like there's no way to get around that somehow. Like even when I wove the textiles, I still needed warping thread that was spun pre-made for me, right? So it was a very interesting process. I learned a lot through it. Yeah. And
Yeah. Well, I love to hear about that toaster project. I have not heard of him or that project,
yeah.
but like it reminded me a little bit of, just a little, but like this project that I heard about. I actually saw the work in person, and it's like haunted me ever since. An artist. So usually what happens is after I'll edit and we'll upload this to the YouTube channel, in the comments or in the little blurb, I'll put some links. So if people want to follow up, I'll have your website, and
Awesome.
maybe we can find a link to the toaster. And
Yeah.
yeah, and this it's a woman. She would basically buy something at Walmart and then recreate it as close as she could to identical, and she'd take the tags out of the Walmart one and sew them into her handmade
Oh, awesome.
garment.
Yeah.
Then she would bring it back to Walmart and like put it back onto the rack.
I love that. Yeah.
Somebody would buy this like handmade object
Yeah.
unknowingly, basically. So yeah, there's something so, oh, it's like heartbreaking in a
Yeah.
way, and like powerful,
Yeah.
and like with this too, I feel like, oh, you know, just, what you were saying at the beginning about, we're sort of lost to the skills
Yeah.
that are required, and we just take everything so for granted. I mean, so I spin wool, and I've taught like a lot of kids and whatever, and I always like tell them, kids used to have one shirt like
Yeah.
their entire childhood.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
When you have to spin every thread, it's crazy. But
Yeah. So that was kind of that was the more original one, the original idea one. Um, yeah. So I, as best as I could, try to recreate that, but it was definitely, it was.
hmm,
I mean, I am pretty skilled in textiles, but I was like, no, I'm gonna learn how to make a table. I've never made a
hmm,
table before, but it's not a right table. But I mean, there are people who go through their whole lives, just like I said, like perfecting those skills. And I mean, people are saying, why would I pay, $2,000 for a table? That's ridiculous, right? But no,
yeah,
it's because it's a table that's built to last, that's built to be there, that has been considered in every aspect of the way, but still people will go out and buy IKEA furniture, right? And I mean, I feel that talks about a greater problem, like a systemic problem that's, not everyone can afford a $2,000 table. It's a very
right.
privileged um, way to be able to afford everything that's sustainable and ethically sourced and ethically made and this and
Mhm.
that, right? Like we're not all like sometimes you just need to you don't have the money or the funds to buy a, a pillow that's been like hand woven by you know
Yeah,
so you just need to go out to Walmart and buy a pillow, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
it's a very privileged notion to be able to do it yourself or be part of this
Mm.
DIY culture, right? It's not as it used to be. I've been having really interesting conversations with some of my students who are, their families are from Newfoundland, born and raised in Newfoundland. And in the province of Newfoundland, Labrador, it's a lot different because this DIY culture isn't frivolous or superfluous. It's out of necessity, right? One of my students, his grandfather was the go-to guy who could make anything, fix anything. He had all sorts. He was kind of a hoarder of materials. He would just collect wood whenever he could, like any scrap he'd repurpose into something else. And that's because they were in an outport community and they didn't have the ability to go out and purchase new things all the time, right? So there's these two, you know, I don't know,
Mm.
the
Yeah,
sort of kind of like clashing of the DIY cultures, I find
yeah.
really interesting.
That's so, I think about like one year when I was running the house museum here, I invited people from the community here, Gillums, on the North Shore, Gillums Meadows,
Hmm.
to make installations within my house about their house.
Yeah.
And one of the people, she actually grew up in Bombay and Gross Mourne
Yep.
before it was Gross Mourne. She
Yep.
was older, and she was talking about exactly that, like, basically there was no garbage because everything was handmade and every scrap was repurposed and reused, and the notion that you would throw something out was like unheard of.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
she wasn't that much older than me, like
Yeah,
wasn't like she was ancient. She wasn't, so it and still very, but it's something funny about like there's a generation where the idea that you can go to Walmart and buy something and it looks like everybody else's in terms of like in Toronto or wherever, like that's a point of pride. Like in
yeah,
a way, like to be able to throw it out is like there's a pride in
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and here I am, I teach the fibers and textile classes here, and I'm teaching people how to knit and how to rug hook and all these skills that, their nans were doing. And if they're lucky, the nans have passed it down to this generation, but mostly now they're learning from me. So it's this
Mhm.
very interesting, yeah, it's super bizarre. I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, you think about like gardening, and having chickens or,
Mhm.
like the food's sustainability and being on an island where every
Yeah,
single thing is shipped in and at one point that was not the case for most of the history, so how quickly to lose that,
yeah.
doesn't take long.
So anyways, it was all these conversations that I was trying to have with this piece, right? So
Mm.
yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, well, it is a really it's a very rich piece for sure. Yeah. And I'm super impressed as a fellow like fibery person that you were able to work with wood.
Yeah, it
it
was
is
so something else.
it is not done in the same way.
And as a 5'1" tiny person, I was like dressed up in this welding gear trying to weld things. It was pretty I did it. I was proud of myself.
I didn't know you were 5'1". That's funny.
Yep.
So this, if I understand, then was the piece you were referring to previously where you
Yeah,
interviewed the people in Biddeford.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that that was really,
Yeah. So let me,
yeah,
yeah.
it was really great. So there was a lot of different conversations happening there, and this was pre-Trump election, I have to mention. Um, and a lot of the conversations that the workers were having, they were like, well, I know this is like a bigger problem, this and that, but we had very, very solid jobs, creating our own high quality um, product. And first they were doing, it was a cotton mill, so they did a lot of cotton based products. They had produced a lot of cotton for the uniforms for uh, the the army, the Northern Army from the Civil War. So they had a
Oh,
lot of like good
wow.
history there. Yeah, it was really, they were really proud of their textile mill. And then, well, production has been slowly trickling offshore to Asian countries and so on and so forth. And they were at the end, they were the only producers of Velux. So Velux, they're Velux blankets. They're these really synthetic, they're flocked blankets.
Oh,
So they're the kind of the weird, kind of fuzzy hospital blankets that you see
yeah, I
a
know what you
lot.
mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they were the only producer of the Velux blankets for about 30 years in the whole world. And then one day, just like that, the owner of the mill came in. He said, "I'm shutting it all down because the Velux has been bought by a company in China." And that was it. They all lost their jobs and they were a little disappointed. But they're huge. They're all huge supporters of the Democratic Party because that was the party that was there at the time, and they bailed them out and offered them like, they would pay them to take classes to be able to perfect their career and find other jobs, and they were really like there for them to support them. So they're very, very not too fond of the Republican Party at all. So anyway, so that I they were just talking about their experiences and all that, and these were just people that were so proud of their product. Like they put
Mhm.
care and love into everything that they were doing. Um, so the image that you see now on the screen, you'll see in the back right, there's a Velux blanket, and that is the Velux blankets that are now being made in Asia.
Uh-huh.
And it is, so I unzipped it. The smell coming from it was like 10,000 shower curtains into one. You know when you unwrap a shower curtain for the first
Yeah.
time? Like that, yeah. It smells like formaldehyde almost. Um, because it's clearly synthetic and they haven't mastered the process, I guess,
Mm.
the way that they had after having done it, in the mills for many years. So I embroidered a review on it, and I machine embroidered an Amazon review onto the blanket, and the machine embroidery itself, it punctured the blanket and just disintegrated where
Oh.
the review is being embroidered onto, and it just was falling apart. And anyways, it was just so interesting because these workers, like I said, they had so much love and care for what they were doing, and just they cared so much and cared about their expertise that
Mm.
they had developed. And for some reason, that really resonated with me as a maker because I feel that. And I paired those interviews. It was very emotional. They were really talking about like the process of it and their role and their fundamental role in making these blankets, right? And how it saved lives and keeps people warm when they're in the back of every ambulance and like they're there to like wrap people in emergency, all these things. And I was interviewing a few people who craftspeople, professional craftspeople in Montreal who were working in textiles and who had that same amount of care and dedication in their work, but weren't getting any recognition for it. So
Mm.
one of the interviews that I had from there was uh, yeah, so basically the white IKEA chair in the back there, right next to that's it
Yeah.
exactly. Um, that interview was from a craftsperson who makes slip covers for couches. So she custom makes slip covers for your old worn out couch, but makes it look really, really good
Mhm.
so that it looks like you have a brand new couch without buying a brand new couch. And it's sustainable. She uses really great sustainable, like sustainably sourced fabrics that are durable and long lasting. And she custom makes just really, really good. And she's like, well, so many people will prefer to just go out to IKEA, buy a new couch, and throw theirs away instead of paying me. I think she's like, I usually charge less than an IKEA couch
Mm.
to go in and like make a beautiful cover for it
Mm.
and make that piece last so much longer, right? Because it's
Mm.
not upholstering. Upholstering is a little bit different, but this is kind of very
Right.
pointed, right? So I made this little diorama of this couch being
Mm.
thrown out, and there's little
Oh.
garbage bags on it, and so you can listen to that interview and then see the diorama of this
Mm.
couch.
My partner just moved across the country and he basically the movers said we don't move IKEA furniture
Wow.
because it breaks. So they just refuse. They won't even put it in the truck, basically.
Wow, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
But it's like what? Like it's, if you can't find someone to take it, like really, it goes in the landfill? Oh,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
ugh. Yeah.
And yeah, this one, this was another. I just, I came across this fella. He is so interesting. He is one of the rare people of my generation who refuses to buy anything new unless absolutely necessary. He's like, first of all, I have no money. Secondly, I feel like there's so much you can learn from just taking a minute with it, sitting with it, maybe downloading a manual online on how it works and picking it apart and just sitting there and seeing how it works, right? And so I interviewed him, and for his story, it was so great. He said, well, one day he wanted to have a second pair of pants, and he got I think one of his family members had given him this black denim. It's like, well, I want to make a new pair of pants. So I only have one pair of pants. I want to have two pair of pants. I have this fabric. I have this one pair of pants that fits me really good. So he made sure he had enough food for about a week in his apartment. He took a pair apart, the only pair of pants he had, took it really gently apart, made a pattern out of his one, and he was doing all this in his underwear, made a pattern from it, and then taught himself how to sew and made a second pair of pants exactly like the first pair of pants that he had. And there was something so nice, but he's like, I just stayed in my apartment for a week and I did it.
Hey, he wouldn't be the first person to go to the grocery store in their pajamas.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and I thought that was so rare for someone in their, well, at the time he was in his 20s to have that kind of mentality, right? And because I mean, we are now in this newer generation, exactly like we were saying, right, where it's so easy for us to just go out and grab a new pair of pants, from Walmart, and that's it.
It's not even a question, right? It's just like, oh, okay, here we go. Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about, this role of like interviewing people or collecting stories, or is that something you're still interested in, or
yeah, I think oral history is it's so important. I just feel like people in our lives have so much knowledge and information and just really relatable content, and we're in a world where it's so easy for us to communicate, but yet we don't. I just find that so baffling, right? Like, we have the ability to communicate like we've never been able to communicate before. And I mean, sometimes we do a little bit, Skype your parents, whatever, but do you really like take the time to talk and listen and like be there for each other all the time? I don't know. It's so weird. So anyways, I just find that if you make the space for conversations to happen and you put a recorder and not make it too intimidating, people have so much to share. Like all of these interviews, I had hours of content of these people.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people feel listened to and feel seen and heard, I would even go further and say that there's something, if I may use a term, it's something very healing.
Yeah.
So for the mill workers to have had this enormous loss, but then have someone come in and genuinely be interested and listen and then care enough to record I'm sure that was really a healing thing for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure too. Yeah. Yeah, and I had this specific exhibition in a gallery in the town, like in the city of Biddeford.
Oh, really?
So they got to come out and hear and see, and it was so great. I mean, it was like a year later, but they were so happy. And they were there for the vernissage and had a glass of wine, and we all applauded them and gave them a space to feel like really good about themselves. Yeah, it was really fantastic.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
and really they deserve, I would rather applaud a mill worker than, like he who shall not be named.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so what is this? This is a little diorama.
Yeah, so that was the link between Montreal or Quebec and Biddeford. So
okay.
One of the people I interviewed explained how his grandparents, because there was like families would generations of different families would just work at the mills, right? So his grandparents had They were from Quebec originally, and they had no jobs. And the story goes that there was this train, because there used to be a train that went up from Quebec to Biddeford, and the train came all the way to Quebec, Montreal, and the the owner of the mill was on the train, and he didn't speak French, and they didn't speak English, and he just held up a bag of money and pointed at it. So they all just kind of hopped on and then went down there, and then they started working, and they could afford houses, and and raise families, and yeah. So that was the story. And so I had this little train going with a tiny little guy with a bag of money pointing. Yeah.
We still, if you held up a bag of money, people would follow you.
Yeah. It was a good strategy. It's good.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a new project.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so I was doing this in grad school as well. It was I always say this is like the precursor to the rug cooking work that is up at the rooms right now. So this was just really nice and fresh and new. So I was really inspired by this whole oral history and family history, and I was just really curious to know about my family, because here I am interviewing all these other people I don't really know. And then I said, hang on a second, maybe I should just look in my own backyard first and foremost and start interviewing people from my family. Because I haven't really sat down to listen to them. Like, I know all about my Grammy, but I don't know that much better, right? And all my grandparents have passed away when I was quite young, so I couldn't actually interview any of them. But I started interviewing first my aunts and my uncles and my dad on my dad's side of my family, about my grandmother on my married side of my family. And yeah, it was just so weird. It was a very organic way that this happened, but it seemed that all of their stories that they were telling me had to do with her cooking.
Uh-huh.
It was I don't know I didn't plan for it to happen that way. It just kind of came up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just so weird. They just all started talking about all the things she used to cook. And yeah, there's I always whenever I give artist talks about my work, I always like to disclose that I'm very cautious about how I describe my grandparents, because I've never asked them if it's okay if I describe them in this way, but I've asked my uncles, my aunts, my dad, do you think if I said this about Grammy, that she'd be okay with the way that I describe her? And they all said yes, because this is how she was. She was very open about it, and she wasn't hiding it in any way. So she was an alcoholic, but she was very open about it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how she just went about her life. And so a lot of the things that had to do with her alcoholism that was linked to depression,
Mm-hmm.
and reflected a lot in the way that she cooked, and the way that she prepared a meal, and the way that she was a homemaker. So that's just how those stories came about, right? That's how they started talking about her. It was a safe way to start talking about my grandmother, because they could reminisce about the horrible foods she made, or oh, that one dish wasn't too bad, that was like the only dish that she could make that was actually really good, or all these stories, right? So
This
what
is
I
like
did.
totally not where I thought you were gonna go. I thought it was gonna be like what an amazing cook she was. So.
No, so I mean, a lot of it, because she was an alcoholic, made her it, it wasn't always easy for her to cook, right? Because she would start drinking like at noon, and then by the time dinner rolls around, that's not as the most sustainable thing, right? So yeah, and I talk a lot about like she used a lot of canned foods or processed foods that were really in vogue at the time. I'm talking about like 1950s, 1960s, like that's when it kind of started in America. be really, really popular, like frozen foods, canned foods. And this was really great for her because it empowered her with the ability to make a nice meal
Mm.
without having to put too much effort into it, right? And, you know, if you take a spam loaf out of like a spam can and you dress it up a little bit, it kind of looked like she would make the spam loaf and she would score it like you would ham and put little cloves in it and cover it with mustard and like bake it like you would a ham, but
Mm-hmm.
it was spam, and she felt like a little bit more empowered by everything that she was dealing with in her life, like at least
Mm.
do that right with the frozen foods and everything. So this was a performance that I did. So I had all these recordings from my dad, my aunts, my uncles, and I played the stories, and then I made these giant foods and I was bringing them out. And yeah, so that's her roast with Brussels sprouts and baked potatoes. And that was the one good thing. They were all looking forward to eating. Like the roast was great, right? And that was her tuna casserole, tuna
Oh.
and mushroom soup casserole. So yeah, I just had made all these big props, spam cans, um, and just to show the struggle maybe a little bit, right? It was always a struggle for her, right?
Mm.
And the conclusion I gathered was she so it's so weird because through this I learned a lot about my grandfather too, and so the my grandfather, so my grandma's husband, he was a doctor, um, but he loved to cook, loved to garden, loved taking care
Mm.
of the kids, loved just like being at home and all
Oh.
that, but he was, you know, working and this and that. And my grandma, I could just feel from everyone's interviews that she would have loved to have worked,
Yeah.
you know, and like didn't.
Hmm.
And that was a huge struggle, right? Like
Mm.
when you want to do something so badly, but you're just that's the life, that those were the norms, and
Right.
it's hard to break from that. And you
Mm.
feel like you're so blessed to be able to just stay home and take care of the kids, but at the same time it comes with this other burden, right? So
Yeah, when it's not a choice.
exactly, yeah. And you know, she had 4 kids, and just, you know,
Mm.
and
Mm.
yeah, so all these big foods were like representative of like this kind of burden she had to
Mm.
be in
Mm.
the home and be homely,
Yeah.
and that's her giant cocktail olive that she would have
Uh-huh.
in her martini.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it was a really emotional performance, but it led into my other body of work very, very nicely. Uh,
Oh, so I think I put a project in between that.
yeah, I love this project too. Yeah, I was really exploring different kinds of performances, many ways. So right around this time, so okay, this like we're breaking, but
I can leap ahead if you'd like.
oh no, this is fine. No, I love it because everything kind of congeals into the other project, so it's perfect. This one, so I grew up speaking both French and English, mostly French. Um, and as you probably know, the French language is incredibly gendered, very, very gendered. Uh, and even in the way that you talk about yourself or you describe yourself, like if you're saying, oh, I'm really happy today in French, you have to say that you're happy in either a man or a woman's way. Like
Mm.
there's no, like you can't just be happy, you have to be like happy in a very gendered way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know several different languages function that way, but French is just, it's one of those things. And what that has done, seeing as my brain has been conditioned to always think of myself in a very gendered way, it's made my realization that I don't necessarily conform to a binary in
Mm.
that way, and that I'm very much kind of trans, gender neutral. I don't really associate with either or, and I just don't feel like the gender that was assigned to me was the right one at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt this my whole life, but it's so hard when you have to be able to speak in a way that pigeonholes you into one or the other. And I was really struggling with this because it's very like, what do I do? How do I navigate this? It's much easier in English. And still there's a lot of problems, but it's
Still, there's a lot of problems, right?
And I was feeling really, this is also, again, I think Trump just had gotten elected and it's very contentious times. That was just really a weird moment in my life, and I latched on to the lobster as kind of a metaphor for absurdity, but also just kind of being able to grapple with the way that I was feeling about my gender. Not that lobsters are necessarily, they don't have like they're gendered, but they
Well,
there's
they have sexes, right?
yeah, exactly. But there's a lot going on with lobsters that's really, really interesting. They're just a real symbol for, I highly recommend, this can be in our links. There's this fantastic book by Nancy Frazier. It's called Lobster, A Crustacean Odyssey.
Already I'm on board. Okay.
Right? Okay. And it is the best book. I was like, oh my gosh, Nancy Frazier and I are kindred spirits. It's fantastic. And basically, she unpacks the lobster in every discipline. So she talks about lobsters like philosophically, lobsters in art, lobsters and like everything under the sun, and what the lobsters in politics, lobsters in religion, lobsters in history, like everything. And it is just so fantastic. And it's the best book I've ever read. And lobsters are so amazing. They're so great.
Wow. Well, yeah, you've sold me. I'm
Yeah.
totally ready
And
to read it. Yeah.
I mean, during the data period, lobsters were being used all the time as kind of this absurd creature to, comment or criticize society in different ways. So I really latched onto that. So what I did for this piece, I did a performance. So I trapped myself in this trap, pre-cooked, and then the next slide is or I'm assuming that one, yes, is I jumped into a lobster pot and boiled myself. So basically what I was doing is I jumped in and then I had a identical lobster costume, but cooked, like post.
Right. Yeah.
And I changed inside the pot real quick and boiled myself. And then I evolved into this kind of luscious red, transformed, trans person that came out, and then I served myself in a still life tableau.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always said if I was going to redo this performance, I would want a couple of art students sitting there with easels painting me. As part of the performance. So yeah, I think that was kind of the moment where I was just, I guess it kind of came out, but also used the absurd lobster as a metaphor for the shit world we're in, I guess. We're grappling with it.
Well, I couldn't help, because I know Biddeford is not like Bar Harbor or something like that, but in Maine, lobster.
Yeah, he lobsters. Yeah, and I mean it makes so much sense, right? I love lobsters. They're the best.
Even here in Cox's Cove, you can get your lobster.
Yeah. And then when I went to Fogo Island,
this was in Fogo.
I was in Fogo Island. I brought my trap from Montreal to Fogo Island.
Wow, that's impressive.
And then I set it up and then had this amazing photo shoot, because when I got to Fogo Island, it was just, my life was just such in turmoil, and I don't know, you go to grad school, it's definitely something that happens to you. You're just like, what is happening with my life? They kind of like tear you down to build you back up, and you get experience all these weird emotions. And I got to Fogo Island, and it just felt so great to be in that space. And I finally felt like something had lifted from me. Like I had achieved something through my work, and that I had really been able to use art as like a way to cope with a lot of negativity or just like feelings I had had previously. So this was the coming out of it and just coming out the other end, just
Mm,
okay and feeling
mm,
good. Yeah.
mm.
So that was it.
Yeah, I didn't take every single picture you had from that photo shoot.
Yeah.
I admit, I took the ones that were like my faves.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. They were really great. So Alana Bartol, who's an amazing artist, did the documentation for this. Yeah.
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 Well, I loved that it moved out of the gallery and like into the
Yeah.
lobster cage.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay. All right. Huh. I
Oh
thought I
yeah.
should do more, but there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So
There
yeah,
we
and it's
go.
still there, still in. They left the trap there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you go back to Fogo Island, you can still see the trap amongst the little traps.
Oh, so I wonder how it's weathering.
Yeah, the last time I went, because I went there about a year later, and it was still kind of there. It was a little bit sad, but it was still there.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that. I love that.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
This big hair.
Yeah, yeah. So this is so to sort of I guess that was like an interlude.
Yeah, but
And
it
to
leads
come
right
back.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my most recent body of work, and it was the work that I did for my thesis exhibition, my MFA thesis exhibition. So yeah. So what had happened? I was on. It's a really great place to leave off. I was on Fogo Island. I was feeling all, I felt all these emotions beforehand. I was lost. So I had all these recordings from my aunts, my uncles, and I was like, why is it that I feel the way that I feel? What what's wrong with me? Like, what's going on? And I came across this quote, and it said, you have to shift the focus from what's wrong with me to how did I get this way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So don't just like think that there's something wrong with you. Just you have to understand that whatever is going on is a greater thing that needs to be unpacked, right? So
Quiet honestly.
yeah, right. And I really wanted to try to do that, and because mental health is so important, and we all know
Mm.
this, but I really dove into unpacking what that would mean. So um, when I did go to Fogo Island, I was like, oh, make, I can't even see art. I don't want to make art. I want nothing to do with art. It was just so much because my MFA was so intense,
Yeah.
like two really intense years of MFA. So what happened? It's 2 intense years of MFA. Then you get to third year at Concordia to it's your thesis year. So you go do your own thing, see the world, whatever you want to do, and work on your thesis show. And by the end of the third year, um, you can graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in my thesis year on Fogo Island, and I was like, I can't. I just got 2 years of this. I was oversaturated of everyone telling me what to do and not telling me to do things, telling me to do this, telling me to not do that. And I was like, what am I doing? And I was just not feeling really good about myself mentally. And I just went to Fogo Island, and I was like, all right, well, we're going to just try this. I don't know what's going on, but we'll just do it. And I like telling the story because it's so important, right? And I opened my suitcase to unpack my things, and I'm like packing away my socks and my underwear, and I look at the bottom of my bag. I'm like, huh, what is this doing here? And it was my rug hook. And I haven't actually, up until this point, I hadn't used rug hooking in my art practice really that much. Like I just knew it as a skill, but I never use it in my art practice ever. And I was like, why is my rug hook here? That doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
And then I started working at the museum for Kay Burns, and her husband was roasting coffee there. So I go down after that she gives me a tour, and I go down into the basement where the coffee roaster is, and I look and I say, "Oh, you have these beautiful burlap bags because that's what the coffee beans come in."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "All right."
It's all coming together.
And then I walk down the street and I go into Wings and Waves, and it's a craft store. You know, they sell craft, and they don't really sell much else besides craft. And then I look over, and they're selling these beautiful skeins of brazen little yarn, beautiful colors, and that's the only material they have. I'm like, all right, I see what's going on here, and I just started rug hooking,
Mm.
and it saved me. It saved me. I just
Mm.
did it, and I immediately started feeling like I could be part of the world again, and I could be
Mm.
a person again. And yeah, I just I haven't stopped.
Mm. Mm.
And yeah, this is how this body of work started.
Mm.
Yeah.
I feel like uh I've been doing a bit of research in preparation for a project in Bonavista Vista in the fall, and I got really interested in like unpaid labor and how really that is what supports the economy, and yet we celebrate economic success as if that's like as if it happens on its own, and and so I've been reading what little history there is about women in early 20th century Newfoundland. And to kind of almost bring it back is like this idea that for some women the winter time was a time to hook rugs, of course.
Yeah.
They were so busy and like starting in the spring, summer, fall
Yeah.
with everything basically, they basically were keeping the whole everything alive. But like for some of them, that creative time of hooking their mats was like a lifesaver. Just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I
And
feel
I
like
and I I've researched that a lot, and I feel that very deeply. And every rug hooker, so I have a few students who I advise at school, and they're also rug hookers. And the subject matter, even though the pieces that we make are completely different, but the subject matter is very similar because there's something about rug hooking that, yeah, it's a life. I don't know, it's a lifesaver, and it's repetitive enough, but it's not like knitting where you're knitting a garment that's practical for warmth or whatever. You're still within the realm of decorative art,
mm, mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
It's still, I mean, it's functional because they were mats and they would keep the floor warm, but really the imagery that could be developed on these mats were mind-boggling. Like it's sky's the limit, right? It's very paint in the same way that you paint,
Right. It's kind
blank
of,
canvas, it's
yeah,
a blank,
yeah,
yeah, it's a blank burlap, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Huh.
and it's slow and repetitive, and each movement, for me at least, really helped to just sit with my own thoughts
Mm,
and be able to unpack what that means.
mm, mm,
Yeah, yeah. And this is my pair, so that's the name of my what was the name of my thesis show, and it's the name of this body of work. It's peeling the sticker off an overripe pear. And I'm talking a lot about anxiety and stress and all that fun stuff.
mm,
There's something about peeling the sticker off an
mm,
overripe pear that it's really like there's a lot of tension in there, and for someone who like always strives for perfection and like that is very concerned about like the aesthetics of their fruit when they're eating it, and like there's all sorts of anxieties and
mm,
traumas that like occur with all that. That's really
mm.
large to unpack. But, you pull that sticker and you're like, oh, there's
Yeah.
a lot going on.
Yeah, well, when I read that title, it was like a visceral kind of like I
Yeah,
completely know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like the bruise is like juicy and
Yeah.
it's also it's like sensual, really,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like a bruise or a tear, you know.
Yeah.
Mm, mm,
And yeah, there's just, yeah.
mm, mm.
So I took all these family recordings, and I did some recordings also from my mom's side of the family as well. So I was like, let's just dive right in here and unpack all these traumas and see what's going let's see what's going on. So there's a lot of different traumas, right, from both sides of my family that have trickled down from generation to generation and have made me the anxious, cucumber that I am, I guess, so yeah, these are just different
Uh-huh.
representations of these stories, and from the oral history that I recorded.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So sort of more, I was really impressed with this one.
Yeah, my Schlitz. Yeah, they're fun. Um,
Particularly, now I can't even remember. What do you call these little rings?
oh yeah, the little connector rings or whatever. Yeah, before they were concerned about
Killing
killing the
wildlife. Yeah.
wildlife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really started to take rug hooking like sculpturally. I haven't seen that a lot before. Usually like mats are
Mm,
two-dimensional, right? It's very like two-dimensional mats. But I'm really excited about exploring the potential of what other forms rug hooking can take, right? It
mm,
worked so well sculpturally.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
So yeah, it's really great to explore with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I took, oops, I don't mean to go too far. Like this image, this is at the rooms, right?
This is what the rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recognize that staircase.
Yeah. So basically, what happened? So the white two-dimensional rug that you see in the bottom, yeah, that one. Uh, that was one. That was one of the first rugs I had made after Fogo Island. So I had made a spam can on Fogo Island, and I was like, oh my god, this spam can. And then the white one I had made, and now I was living in St. John's, and I decided to exhibit it at Eastern Edge for the members show in the winter.
Mhm.
Just I think it was just before Christmas or something, and like November. And I exhibited it there. And Darren, he's the curator of Canadian art at the rooms.
Mhm.
He came down and just took a peek, and it was so weird. So Darren had the same position I had on Fogo Island, but the year before. So we had the same job, but like the year, yeah, spread out. And so we all knew of each other, but we had never really met. And then someone facilitated a meeting. We had a little dinner at our place, and he came up to my studio and he said, "Yeah, I saw that rug at the at Eastern Edge there. Got anything else I can see?" And I said, "Sure." And I showed him my studio. He said, "Let me think about this, and I'll get back to you." And then he got back to me and he said, "Yeah, I just wrote a whole exhibition about hooked rugs. I'm going to propose it, so just stay tuned." And he proposed it
Mm,
with my pieces being like the one of the
mm.
featured artists, and it got accepted. And I mean, now it's a year later, and here we are.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah,
If only it was always like that.
right. That has never been my experience. It just so happened, and it was so funny because it was his first big proposal that he had written for the rooms, and it was kind of my first big like
Yeah.
you know rug hooking exploration, and it just yeah.
Well, I feel like, obviously it's something that people here have a lot of pride in and doing
Yeah.
things and yeah. So, and I'm sure I mean, have you heard feedback from people like women who are hookers?
Oh yeah. So last about a month ago, it was the end of January. I went back and I did an artist talk, and then I did a community hook-in at the room,
Uh-huh.
and that was fantastic. So the artist talk was just full of people coming up to me saying like, "Oh, you need to look at my grandmother who did this and all, I don't know, just the best stories. Like that's another like oral history project in and of itself. Like that's, I want to be able to take it in that direction now a little bit and just sit down with some people from here who have stories about rug hooking, because there's so much there. And even though, you know, like the folklore department at MUN is doing some work in rug hooking, but it's like it scrapes the surface of what there is out there in terms of knowledge, in terms of like um, imagery of these certain kinds of rugs that hasn't been documented, or uh, a lot of the people that I talked to said that, you know, their nans or even their parents or even them would make rugs with very similar emotions and like concepts going into them, right? And all these things. So I'm just, yeah, that's my next big research. Daunting, but I'm very excited to learn more, a little bit more, right? Because there's such a history here, and I want to be able to record all of it.
Yeah. So this is the one that was in the corner there.
Yeah, that's the I was at the member show at Eastern Edge.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So is it you just took the photo there, or did you exhibit it on the ground?
It was on the ground. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. A little platform. Yep.
And that was your little.
Yeah. My little TV.
All right. I think that was where.
Yeah, that was well rounded.
It was. Yeah. So good. So good. So rich, and I can't wait to see what's coming.
I have two different projects that I could talk a little bit about them and
Yeah.
stay tuned. So, basically right now I'm working, two separate projects. So one of them is I'm exploring different, because I was a child of the 90s, and I'm exploring all kinds of different toys, candies, and products that contributed to very much perpetuating the wrong gender that I was assigned. So I'm recreating rug hooked replicas of these different toys that are very, very, very gendered, and different candy that are all like hot pink, and perpetuated this idea of like super friendship between girls and like girlhood, and without leaving me the space to necessarily like grow into the person that I was or I am, right? So so that's really exciting. My latest piece, I'm trying to do this. I'm recreating a magic date ball. So you know how there's magic 8 balls, but I had one that was a magic date ball, and it was hot pink, and you can ask about your crush or whatever. And that's the one I had, right? And I really desperately wanted the regular version, but I didn't get it. And so I'm recreating it. I'm rug hooking it. So I rug hooked it, and now I'm doing the mechanism so that you can shape
it'll really work?
It really works. So I managed to make it float. I still need to be able to make the text a little bit more legible, but I'm troubleshooting through that. So it's all rug hooked, and you can shake it and ask it a question, and then the little dice comes up with the answer on it, and it works. It's just I need to get the text a little bit more legible.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm doing all sorts of things like that, right? And my next piece that I'm going to be tackling is like little Tamagotchis. I don't know if you are familiar with those. So they were all about like pet keeping, but it was about like kind of being like motherly and being able to sustain a living being, right? And all these things. So I had a Tamagotchi, and I had to sustain this creature, and so. My undergrad is an animated film, so what I'm doing is I'm rug hooking little each frame of what the Tamagotchi would do.
Oh my gosh.
And then I'm going to have it play inside of a rug hooked giant Tamagotchi with a screen, and you'll see the animation, but the animation's all rug hooked.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and I'm trying to make a lava lamp and a rug hooked lava lamp, like a hot Anyways, it's just they're really fun to troubleshoot and to make because yeah, I'm really trying to push the boundaries of rug hooking while also talking about this thing. And this will be exhibited this summer in New Brunswick. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I got asked to participate in this show, so I'm very excited. And then the second piece I'm working on is called Every Bathroom I've Ever Bathed In. And it references Tracy Emin's work. Do you know Tracy Emin? Yeah, so it references every person I've ever slept with, which, she embroidered the names of every person she's ever slept with, but it goes beyond just a sexual relationship. Like she slept in the same bed as her mother and her brother and, all these things. So every bathroom I've ever bathed in I'm recreating each bathroom that I've ever taken a bath in. Like I've showered in plenty, but I haven't bathed in it in that many bathrooms. So in my whole life, from what I can remember, I've probably bathed in about 6. And most of them recently just because I feel a lot more comfortable in my body and I feel a lot more comfortable being in a space where I could check, like a bathroom is a very kind of like you check your body and you have to be made very aware of what is happening to your body in a bathroom because it's like a self-reflection and a like checking, right? And you have to uphold this like daily baptism of like cleanliness and purification. But it's also a place where there's a lot of different things happening, like sickness and health and beautification and like social checking of yourself and all these things, right? It's very, very, and especially as a person who, is trans, it's always a very, very difficult space to navigate. So I'm going to be making start off with 2 different bathrooms that I've bathed in. And 2 of the 6 of those bathrooms will be exhibited at the Craft Council gallery in 2022. So
will they be rug hooked or like?
Everything in it will be rug hooked. Everything.
Wow.
So I'm going to be working with a carpenter to make it structurally sound, and then I'm going to rug hook everything, like the tiles, the bathtub, the plunger, the sink, the medicine cabinet, the pill bottle. So actually I have this I can show you. So this is my rubber ducky for one of the bathrooms.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything's going to be rug hooked in it. Yeah.
Rug hooked answer to, Liza Lou and her beaded kitchen.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was referencing that too, right? And it's just a different, wool is soft, wool is absorbent, wool is the opposite of what you would want in a bathroom.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. And, maybe I won't have to do it now, but I've had this idea for a while and it hasn't quite gelled in my head yet. But like when I was growing up, my mom would always have those bathroom sets where like the cover on the toilet top and the tank and the Kleenex and the little rug for your feet at the toilet, which is like the most unsanitary thing.
It's so disgusting. And I mean, one of my bathrooms will have some of these rugs.
Yeah.
Rug hooked on top of the other rug hooking.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, maybe you've released me from needing to make that project.
But I always had this dream. I was like, I need to figure out how to do this at some point. I would love to have like a show in a gallery, but then also curate another show in the gallery's bathroom.
Yes.
Having like bathroom art. Like I always find bathroom art so interesting. It's like, what do you put in a restaurant bathroom? Most of the time it's super random, and I just find it so. There's something so strange about bathroom art, but I just wanted to curate a little like bathroom art show.
Yeah, I'm on board with that 100%. I really feel like it's to me like putting art in a bathroom is like kind of my favorite place to put art, and it's so I don't know, it's so special because it's an intimate little room, and when I was running the house museum, I had collected poetry from a poet named John Steffler, who used to live in Corner Brook
Yep.
at the university, and he recorded some of his poems about Newfoundland.
Yep.
And my idea was, which I was never able to technically pull off perfectly, was that when you went to the bathroom and shut the door, it would.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. And he would start reading his poems as you did whatever you were doing in there. So yeah, like I said, I couldn't quite make it happen perfectly. Yeah. So it ended up being that you had to actually press a button, which to me defeated like the main thrill of it. But yeah.
That's awesome. Maybe I should propose this somehow.
Yeah.
Make this happen.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
It's just such a space that is, it's like whenever I go to even like Eastern Edge, you have to walk and that little hall. I don't know if you've ever been in the bathroom.
I haven't, no.
Okay, but it's like it's not in the gallery. You have to walk down this hall and turn and turn and turn, and it's like a shared bathroom, and it's just like the worst. And it's like just want to like use that space and turn it just for like a hot minute. Just something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been a blast. Like, it was so nice to go through like my whole my whole art work.
Yeah. Well, it's very inspiring and really interested to see these projects that you're working on as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, I took a few pictures recently, but they're still so in progress that I was like, just follow my Instagram and I'll keep you updated.
We'll get another link. We'll add those links and great. Thank you.
Well, awesome. Really, really great chat.